In an effort to learn more about her heritage, my mom got her DNA tested. Little did we know, that cotton swab would change our lives. After months and months of lineage research, for her 60th birthday, we surprised her with a family trip to Ireland in search of her relatives. And so began our journey.
Traveling around in search of relatives was so fun. It was like investigative discovery. We were on the back roads, in the nooks and crannies, in the middle of Ireland. Our driver, who was actually born, raised, and actually a sergeant in the Garda for 35 years, he had never done something like this. We were taking him places he'd never been. We were driving on roads that aren't even on the map. We stopped at local post offices and cemeteries and asked people if they had ever heard of the people I was looking for. We went through this little town of Hollymount. It was like a block and a half. The population is 68. There's one store, a post office, and of course, 2 pubs. So I asked the clerk in the grocery store if she knew who I was looking for, and she pointed across the street and said, yes, he lives right there. So I went over and I knocked on the door. His son-in-law answered the door, and I just explained who I was, and they have a look of like, what, on their face. And his daughter was there, and she welcomed me by saying, oh, in her brogue, so what brings you home? It was beautiful. And my second cousin, who I went to meet, was actually out on a walk. So when he came in, I almost dropped because he looked like my grandmother and my uncle. It was really kind of surreal to see his face and his mannerisms and his build. It was really kind of like, oh my gosh, like this is beautiful.
While we were talking to my mom's second cousin, he shared with us that we actually had another second cousin who she didn't even know existed. He didn't have an address, only a town. We went into Kingsland and again asked people at the post office. We followed their directions, but still had no address. Then we found a woman walking with her kids down the street. We asked if she happened to know who we were looking for, and she did. She pointed us just a few houses down the road. It was there that we met my grandfather's cousin.
First found the schoolhouse that my grandparents met at, this one room cement schoolhouse. It like touched my heart, pretty deeply. The most emotional part was finding my grandmother's house. It was a tiny, tiny, tiny house, and there was a lot of people born there. Actually, they built a regular type of house, and then they preserved her smaller house where she was born. There's no other feeling. I can't even describe it. But it was almost like an out-of-body experience. That's how wonderful it was. When I actually found my family, it was surreal because it was such an expedition with such a beautiful gift, not only for me, but that my children got to meet their third cousin, their fourth cousin, and their little fifth cousins. It was beautiful. Who gets to do that in a lifetime? This whole process, from sending out my DNA to finding relatives I didn't even know I had, to bringing my children with me, to finding everybody, it was so satisfying because the months and months of research and staying up till like 4 in the morning because I was so obsessed with it all. And then to look at them, I felt like I was like going back in time, looking at my uncle, my grandmother, my father, and my brother. It was really kind of crazy. It was so much fun to dig up some history. I have new family that I'm looking forward to maintaining a meaningful connection to. It was unbelievable. It was amazing.